Hey guys, welcome back to Heart of the Hero, Tools for Successful Minds. I'm Dan. I got Greg here with me. We're going to get into some good stuff today.
Yes, today we are talking about your fractured attention. We're honestly going to be really diving in today to a real deep understanding of sort of how attention works and maybe some of the reasons why. And you could, if you're listening now, um, have maybe some issues with focusing or knowing how to actually really hunker down and get that deep, crisp, sharp focus level that maybe you've had before, but you're not able to hold on to as often as you'd like, right? So today we're going to kind of talk about some of the reasons why that might be the case, some of the quick fixes, and some of the little more in-depth things that you can do to really fix this problem and get yourself a better handle on how to focus properly.
Yeah, it's something that's important for all of us to have, good focus skills. Often people just say, well, I can't concentrate. And well, you can, you just have to, it's a skill that has to be kind of practiced and, acquired through, practice and actually putting yourself in a position where you actually are made to focus and sit still and work on something for, a period of time, so it's something that I think stems into really every area of our life where, if we have fractured attention and we're not, really focused on what we're doing and we're always scatterbrained in what we're doing, you're going to see some issues kind of arise. You're going to see some, problems in your life and areas that are affected by that.
Yeah, and it's going to really touch probably just about every area that you interact with in life, because the thing about your attention is it pretty much controls your experience. I mean, you could imagine a person who's not necessarily able to focus when they want to, right? The things that you want to get done, well, how would you get them done? It might be a little bit inefficient. You might feel a certain type of way, right? And that's kind of what I wanted to maybe move into a little bit, was some of the things that a person might feel, some of the things that, and maybe if you're listening now or watching now, you might experience some of these things that we might mention, and it will give you a little bit of a lens into your own understanding of what's actually happening in your own experience. So one of the first things I wanted to kind of jump into was the feeling that you get when you're not able to focus, right? When you have this habit or this need to scan for things constantly, right? Your Facebook, or Google, or I need to go type something, or I need to go look something up, or I need to go talk to somebody, or I need to go have a drink or eat some food, or you're not able to really hone in that deep, sharp level of focus that you really get only once in a while, and you might have that sometimes. But what are some of the other problems that maybe someone could be experiencing from just not being able to focus? They have this diffused, kind of loose way of doing things because they're not able to really sharpen it down. What are some of the problems that might come with that?
I'd say you'll probably start to see things pile up, you'll there when you're, because when you're constantly spreading your attention and being distracted by demands and other things like Facebook and all the things you mentioned, when you're being distracted by those things and you're not able to focus on what you're doing in front of you, it's not getting the attention that it probably deserves, and most likely you're not getting it done as good as you need to be getting it done or as quickly as you need to be getting it done. And so a lot of times, if you have trouble focusing on a task, you'll end up seeing that you have 3 or 4 or 5 tasks all piling up on themselves because you've not really given any of the amount of time and attention necessary to get those done. So it's a difficult skill to master. It's something I've dealt with personally, where I used to not be able to sit down and read for more than 5 minutes before I was off in my own head thinking about something that was maybe semi-related but not really related, and somehow I'm 4 paragraphs ahead in the book, and I'm like, wait, I kind of wake up consciously like, all right, when's the last time that I was actually paying attention, and I'll have to go back and go back a page and be like, oh yeah, okay, this is the last thing I remember, because I just kind of tuned out and my attention was pulled somewhere else. So it was something that took time to kind of develop good study habits, and good habits of staying kind of doing what you're doing and only focusing on that. It comes with a lot of control over, your mind to be able to push out anything but what is in front of you.
Yeah, and I think there is this idea of control that I think everyone kind of at the bottom, at the base level of our experience, we kind of want that. We kind of want more control over our own, experience, over what we're doing, over what we're getting, over what we're feeling. And you mentioned how, your study habits are happening, and how that works and whatnot, right? Well, if you're hearing this, and maybe you're hearing this for the first time now, or you're just tuning into what we're doing here. For you, if you're a student, right, or if you have something that you're consistently needing to study, right? This is one of those shows, probably one of the more rare shows that we're actually going to cover this in a way that you can actually put this into use, right? Because we haven't talked about focus very much, and we may not talk about it that much in the future, but today it's important to cover because I think there's a lot of people who have this as a problem, right? They have this as an issue because I remember, especially for myself, when I had issues with being able to actually focus. And I think Bruce Lee has a quote about that. Actually, it's what is it? An average man becomes more with laser-like focus or something. It was something like that. Well, I don't know if you remember it, but essentially he says that your ability to focus is what's going to actually take you to the next level, right? And that's true, especially if you're studying or you have school you need to get done, or maybe you're a medical student or whatever it is, right? You have to actually be able to apply yourself. So whether or not you're attentive is paramount, right, for your own development.
Yeah, and I mean it really all comes down to how a self-control thing. It really comes down to how much control you have over yourself and your conscious mind. We often hear people say things, and maybe some of the listeners can empathize with this, where you talk about meditation, and one of the initial responses from a lot of people is, well, I just can't get my mind to be quiet. I don't know how to do that. My mind never goes quiet. That's impossible. I can't do that. And well, I've always kind of told people that, well, one thing that I would recommend is try not to push everything out, just focus on one thing. And because if you can, you try to often, like, it's like I talked about in another video, if you try not to think about something, it's really difficult to do. But if you give your mind something to actually like absorb into, which you have, that's kind of the problem, is you have something in front of you that you could give all of your attention to. You could shut off those pathways in your head, and fill them with ideas about what you're doing in front of you. But it's the kind of weakness, and it's a reflection of, I mean, I don't want to get too, straightforward or blunt here, but your ability to focus is kind of a direct reflection of your discipline. It's a kind of direct reflection of how bad you want to do what you actually want to do. Because if you really wanted something and you were really like passionate about getting something done, you wouldn't be fracturing your attention and easily swayed by Facebook and TV and other temptations. You would be staying focused. You would know, maybe you would get a little distracted, but you would pull yourself back and be like, no, I'm here, I'm doing this. And you would commit and push through, so your attention and your focus is something that I said can be built as a skill. And one of the ways is by starting to kind of implement processes like just, for instance, sit down and try to read a book or do your studies or whatever it is you do, and do it for 10 minutes and try to completely lose yourself in only that. Just 100%, all your thoughts, everything that you can give your mind, just fill your mind with whatever it is you're doing as much as you possibly can, and just do that constantly for 10 minutes. Just focus only on this. Push yourself to only be thinking about things that you want to do. And say you can't make it the whole 10 minutes, no big deal. How long did you last? That's your benchmark. And now you need to start pushing that. You need to actually start like trying to increase that amount of time that you were able to stay totally and completely engrossed in what you were doing, because over time you start to build this kind of endurance to distraction, where your mind is now used to writing off these distractions as, these are unimportant. Whereas now you kind of they have a foothold, they have a hold of you, where when you get distracted, you easily pick up your phone and you go. When your phone vibrates, you pick it up and you're distracted and you're over here and you're in a conversation, or somebody calls you and you're in a phone conversation. You easily just pick it up. Yeah. Well, that your mind knows that when those things happen, you just do them. Well, you have to train new habits in your life. You have to actually train yourself to give uninhibited focus on what you're doing in front of you for as long as you can. Time yourself and try to push yourself to go longer and longer each time, because that practice over time will give you some good results on increasing your attention and focus.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of obstacles that you'll come up against. I remember specifically for me a couple of years back, when I was maybe picking up some new skills, I had this kind of program that I was on, which was, I'm going to set this timer. I'm going to learn this and this and this and this and this. I'm going to be here for this long. And, you start off at, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and eventually maybe for you, right, you're at an hour or 2 hours. Well, sometimes, in life, whenever you're trying to learn something new, or you're trying to go into a new, area and really hunker down on something and focus and maybe creatively output or whatever it is for your own life, right? There's an ability that kind of appears. And it's not yours, it just appears. And what I mean by that is, when you procrastinate, right? Like when you wait on something or you know it really needs to get done, all those things that normally really mess up your attention, they just go away because it's do or die mode, right? It's survival. It's, I need to make this deadline for my job, or you're not able to generate that on your own, but you can actually access it if, you wait long enough, or, enough negative things, pile up in your life, or you have a lot of issues, right? You can find this space where your ability to become, just this laser of focus, it actually happens. It's there, but it's not something maybe that you might actually be able to access when you want it. And that's the problem. And that's ultimately the challenge we kind of want to move through today, is maybe giving you some really giving you some concrete ways that you can get beyond that. But even more than that, letting you sort of see why you'll be able to feel better about your own ability to do that, right? Because the main thing to really key in on, the main thing to really use is the fact that when you focus, right? The fact that when you're able to focus how you want to, when you want to, and where you want to, right? You lose that sense of there's almost a self-esteem thing, right? And I say that with love, it's like, that you want to do things, right? That there's things that you want to get done, like things that that need to be taken care of, and all this kind of stuff, right? But something stops you, right? And sometimes it's your television, or sometimes it's, you got to go somewhere, you get a text and you shouldn't pick it up, but you go, you end up on somewhere else, right? Or you're looking at, memes or whatever it is. And that really hits you, right? It hits you, in your feelings, well, I'm not worth this. I wish I could do this. I'm not the kind of person who can. So kind of let all that go. Kind of let all that go for right now, because I kind of now want to move into some of the obstacles that you might run into as a person who's really trying to repair the way their mind works and repair their own focus, right? So what do you think some of the obstacles might be specifically, right? If you were to think about it now, maybe for a listener, what might they actually run into that would stop them from being able to move forward on this and think about it?
I think a lot of times the effect that it can have on the people around you is some of the initial change, that you have to get used to, where, there's people that you've been talking to regularly, and there's people in your life that you see on Fridays and Thursdays and Saturdays, or people you talk to weekly and bi-weekly and you catch up with, and you have family that would like to see you, and if you have kids, they'd like you to bring your kids around, or you have all these kind of demands from the people in your life that you've set up. And so when you find yourself in a place where you're giving more time to the things that you're trying to do, more effort towards starting your business, more effort towards, your classes or your personal study or whatever it is that you're doing, when you find yourself in a time where you're needing to increase your level of focus, the part of the effect that kind of stops is it's at first, it's not even the resistance of yourself. It's the resistance of other people. Like you start, putting your phone on silent and working for, an hour, 2 hours a day because you want to get stuff done, and you're not kidding around anymore. And then you check your phone and you got 7 messages from people and wondering where you're at and why they're not texting you back. And now you feel bad. So you start texting them and explaining, oh, I'm trying to work harder and do this. And you're having to put energy into eventually when you start really hunkering down and start, making the sacrifices that are necessary for greatness and whatever that you want to do. Cause we have to really give all that we have to what the things that we want to get those out of life. And I think people that are successful know that it's just something that nobody's going to give it to you. You actually have to go out and achieve it and do these things. So when you start that, you start sacrificing time with people and family and all these things, you're going to feel from resistance from them, like wondering why you're not coming around as often. Why aren't you hitting me up? Why don't we talk anymore? There's going to be friends that you straight up just don't talk to anymore that think you're mad at them, but you're not. You just have things that you have to get done. And so you're like constant. So there's this battle of setting up a balance between your social and personal life and the things that you're trying to do that you got to kind of meet, which includes some sacrifice, because you've been heavy over here on the social and not very much, not very much over here on the working hard and grinding and staying focused. And so when you kind of lift this one's going to kind of go, and you can't really bear all that weight anymore because you've given some more time to yourself and what you're doing, and you're trying to stay focused and not be distracted by your friends and family and the demands of you as a person. So one of the main struggles I think you will go through, if you're really giving your all to this, is there's going to be people in your life that, you might not get to talk to as much or see anymore. And, your friends that you do hang out with don't hang out with you quite as much because you're dedicated. You're trying to stay focused. You're not trying to be distracted by all these other fun, cool, tempting things. You're trying to stay focused on yourself and working on yourself and what you want to do. And so that's kind of one of the first off the bat things that I think people are going to deal with, as well as just also a resistance physically. I think your eyes will, you'll notice if you ever like are reading a book for a long period of time for the first time or the first couple times, your eyes will sometimes start to water because you're not blinking them as often because you're reading and they're focused and they're not used to being used that long for a long of a period of time. Your eyes will start to water. You'll start to feel drowsy, you'll feel lazy. Your body will feel heavy and, or you'll be biting your nails. You'll be restless and you'll be wanting to get up and move around because you're not used to keeping yourself still and focused on one thing. Your body's used to having Facebook, Netflix, YouTube, music, driving, and on the phone at the same time. It's used to just constant, stimulus. And so when you focus it and keep your body and your mind still and on one thing, like there's also a physical kind of resistance to it because you're not used to it,
Well, and I think that the used to it is kind of the way to say it, which kind of brings up in my own mind. I think a lot of the listeners, they're in this category, right? There's this idea, there's this perspective, which is that now, right, the generations now moving forward, right, age 25 or so down, especially if you're in your teens, right, or your early college age, this is gonna hit you right in the gut, right, because you have grown up with instant everything, right, instant access to whatever it is that you want, right, you get a couple of days delivery, like you want to order something, it comes in a few minutes or hours tops, like when you buy something online, it's an instant purchase. Like you can get, all this stuff is immediate, right? Netflix is immediate. Like all these things are very, very fast, very quick. And so if you do that over and over and over and over and over and over and over for years, which most people do, you're born, you're 9 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, whatever it is, you start playing some games or you start, calling people or anything related to electronics or anything in that field, right? Just technology in general, entertainment, all these things are very fast access things compared to 10, 20 years ago, right? And so this isn't a bad thing, right? This isn't me, oh, don't do this, this isn't good. It's awesome, right? It's great and it's useful, but there are some costs. And one of the costs is you don't get this, there's a tendency to not have developed the ability to be in this state of laser focus. And I'll tell you why that is. If your attention is constantly diffused, right? It's constantly between 5 to 10 things. You don't ever have the skill. You don't ever grow the skill to bring it down to one thing, right? So what happens and what tends to happen, and maybe this has happened to you if you have this experience, right? You're totally fine. You're totally fine watching a television show, right? All the way through, 9 hours, right? Just binging it. That's great. That's easy for you. But the reason is because that's not something that there's any resistance to, right? It's not something you have to move through or fight your body on. You're just consuming, right? You're not forcing yourself to put anything out. It's fun, right? It's relaxing. It's cool. It's something that you enjoy doing. But when you switch that, right, and you try and do things that might be a little more difficult, right? Maybe you're cleaning your room or you're, making a phone call you don't want to make. That's where you come across the resistance. And because the habits are built in, right? And I'm in the same pool. If you may be identifying with this, you have to fight all of these things that come up, right? The feelings and, I don't want to do this. And well, that's because your mind, your habits, you're sort of built in a way, you're conditioned in a way that you're constantly scanning, right? And you're constantly scanning for new novelty, for new stimuli, for the newest television show. Did someone message me on Facebook? Now you could imagine 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And this isn't to, like turn this into this big dramatic thing, but just for a second, if you could picture what life would be like, right, in an agricultural society or something very quiet, right, something very, very slow, what would happen is everything that you're doing, every action you were taking would be the most important action you were taking. There wouldn't be any way to diffuse your attention, right? So the difference is just that it has nothing to do with you as a person, right? Don't think, oh, I'm not able to do this, I'm horrible. No, you're not. Nothing to do with that. All it is that you have spent the most time with your attention in a more diffused way. So we want to talk about some of the ways that you might actually be able to change that.
Well, and I think too, there's some evidence of greatness among people that their attention was solely given to one area of their life. You know, I mean, if you look at people who these people that are dedicated, driven, ambitious people that have this success, it's because if you look at where they spend their attention and how they spend their attention, they put it on themselves and their business. They put themselves into these businesses that they create, whether they are the business and they are the product, or they're providing a business or a product or service, whatever it be. And whether you're an entertainer, it doesn't matter. You've invested a certain amount of time into becoming this person, and how much time and how much attention and focus you give that can be and is often a reflection of the success that you are going to have. Now, that's not a rule that's black and white. I'm not saying that all you have to do is, give a lot of effort and you're going to make it. But what I am saying is that to achieve greatness in anything that you want to achieve, you must give an extraordinary and a great amount of effort to get there, because it does not come cheaply. Becoming one of the greats, doing things at the best of your ability, even as a person, whatever it is not something that's just easy. To be there's an average for a reason, and it's because some people don't live up to the fullest potential that they could as a human being. And often I think probably some listeners that probably are listening are among where we're already at the place where it's like, yeah, we see that, I mean, if you're like me, you kind of see it, you're able to see it one day and like look out and be like, oh, I want things, I want a certain lifestyle. I want to meet certain people and do certain travel and do all these fun stuff and, bring my family places and like provide for them and make sure that, they have strong, healthy futures and all these just, fun things that I want. And I realized that the one thing that was stopping me was me. The one thing that was stopping me was everything else that wasn't getting me there. And all those things filled up my life. I mean? It was like I had a life and then I had this, and it was like, okay, all of this is great. My life, it was fine. The friends I had were cool. I could go hang out. I could play video games and just mess around and do all the stuff that I used to do when I was unmotivated and not going anywhere. But instead, I'm at a place where I know that to get there, I have to give my attention to this one thing, not my entirety of my life. This needs to be my number one focus. And to achieve greatness, that's just period. There is no emotion behind that. If you have kids, you might be thinking, well, my kids. No, think about the life that you can provide for your kids. If you had success at that level, what kind of lifestyle, what kind of perspectives and mind opening and culture could you expose your kids to if you were successful at what you were doing? What do you think that's going to do for your kids' psychology, seeing their parents be dedicated and work hard at something and actually achieve it? What I mean? What are you trying to teach to your kids? That it's okay to settle, that it's okay to not go for what you want to do? I mean, I get tired of people using the kid excuse on me. I have two and I'm grinding every day. It does not matter. And I see them 4 to 3, like I see them most of the week. So it's one of those things where people kind of frustrate me and they have these excuses about, well, I have so many things that they need my attention. My kids need my attention, and my husband or wife, if you have one, needs my attention, and my job, I have to stay focused. Yeah, that's true. You need to make sure all those things are lined out. But I think if we were all honest, those are pretty base level things that don't actually take a lot of our attention. A lot of those things just happen naturally. Maybe your job, what you have to do at your job. It's most likely not that overly complex, especially if you're here trying to find something that's a little more for you. So all these things in your life that you can surround yourself with that I'm talking about are really great, but to actually achieve something in your life and make your mark on this world, you actually have to give your attention to the one thing that's going to get you there. What is it that actually is going to get you there? What task, what thing in front of you? If you have a checklist of stuff you need to do, then march through that checklist. Those are the only things that matter in your life. If what you want out of your life is achieving next level greatness, and actually getting somewhere. Yeah, I went a little hard there.
No, I think that's what we need. I mean, it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating if you get caught in this cycle of you want things, right? But your attention is just so broken. It's just so all over the place that you can't get to them, right? You can't move to them, right? And so for the people who know, for the people who and maybe it's not, you haven't even said it yet, you haven't even verbalized this, but you've decided like this is worthwhile. Like this is a worthwhile thing, right? What are maybe some and I'll give my own experience in this, right? But I kind of want to talk about some of the ways that you could maybe start to move towards solving this, maybe rewiring, and I want to kind of move into that a little bit for myself, right? With what happened for me, what worked for me was to start very, 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 very small, very, very, very small. And what I mean by that is there's a tendency for some people, right? Some, people you might watch on YouTube, or, professors or gurus or people you pay, coaches, like all these people, right? They'll tell you that you need to set your goal to the mountaintop, and like, this is what you don't do that. Don't do that. Not with this. And I'll tell you why. Because if you set your goal so high, right? If your attention level is 0 and you say, I'm going to sit here for 5 hours and do this thing, you will not do it. You will not do it. And I'll tell you why you won't do it, because you're going to sit down to do the thing, right? Or you're going to go to the place to do the thing. And you're going to start thinking, and you're going to start wondering, what else could I be doing right now? Like, did this person message me? And it's going to be the most agonizing process, right? And the whole time you're not actually going to get anything done. You're going to be distracted, right? The whole time you're going to be so distracted, you will not actually make any progress. And by the time you finish, you'll look back and say, man, that was awful. I didn't do that well because I'm horrible and I have no attention, right? So instead, you could choose. If maybe this is something that you want, you could choose to start very, very small. You could say, okay, I'm not a good reader. I don't have the attention that I need when I'm reading. So instead of going through and doing 5 chapters, like, everyone's saying I need to do on Facebook, or all these motivational groups say I need to, don't do that. Say, I'm going to go do 5 minutes and go do it. Actually go set that goal and you achieve it, because you get this bump, right? And it gives you momentum. We talked about this before, right? It's you have to start small.
And actually, that reminds me of how we kind of started, because I remember, and I don't know how long it was now, but when it was a while ago now, but I remember might have been you with the idea of doing 10-minute blocks.
Yep.
And so what we would, for the listeners here, what Greg and I would do is we had trouble with this. This is not something that was foreign to us when we started. We were very easily distracted. We had a lot of things and people we could get distracted by, and so we'd find that Greg and I were very like-minded in what our aspirations and our ambition and the things we wanted. So what we would do is we would get on a Skype call or a Skype, or it was some other platform of communication, and I would sit down at our desk and we would start for 10-minute blocks. And we go radio silent. We wouldn't be talking. We would just be like working. And I remember thinking I would get distracted. But what I would get distracted by was like, okay, like, oh, he's working right now, like, because he's not talking, he's working. So I gotta stay, and I would just jump back in, boom, in that 10 minutes. And that 10 minutes goes by so fast when you give all your attention. I call it time slippage. You just slip through it and all of a sudden you're done. And we would just sit there and chit chat for 10 minutes, like, yeah, that's really different. That seems to be effective. I'm really able to focus. And then 10 minutes was up, boom, we jump right back in. No radio silence. We were just working. And we did that for, it actually didn't take that long until I think we both kind of like, all right, we don't need to do this on a chat anymore. We've pretty much got the practice. But it was like this accountability thing where it was like, that starting small, where, we had just a mountain in front of us of stuff that we needed to take care of and do. And instead of focusing on that, you're focusing on the 10 minutes in front of you. And I've talked about in other videos. If you're cleaning a big room with 10,000 square foot tiles, you're not staring at the room while you're cleaning, or else you're probably not doing a great job. You need to be looking at the tile that you're cleaning and clean all of it, and then keep moving forward like that. Because if you're just constantly looking out and wiping randomly, you're not even doing a good job doing what you're doing. So it was like, just kind of training that heightened focus for bursts is really good. I used to have to stand up and like, I'd be working. I'd do one thing and it was a really small thing, but I wouldn't care. I would get up and I'd walk around the room. I'd go, grab something, grab a snack, or, play some music, play a song or something I liked. And I'd come in, I'd sit back down because it was like, all right, you got to be distracted for a second. I'll come back and sit back down. Like, even in that 4-hour block you're talking about, if you're really trying for something like that, just let yourself be distracted for like 2 hours of that. And then you'll have been working for 2 hours. If you a lot of times you try to go for these long blocks. Don't do that. If you want to work for an hour, then divide it up into 10-minute sections and do 6 10-minute sections. And then at the end of those 6 10-minute sections, you'll have done an hour's worth of work, which is way more than you probably would have been doing. So it's about having a different perspective and try to look at your own situation in your own life and what kind of neat little shortcut tricks can you have like that to kind of kickstart your focus and your attention.
Well, yeah, there's this idea in a lot of circles that you don't necessarily always have to do it right. Just do it badly. Just start doing it, right? Because if you do it badly, right, and I definitely don't advocate to do a huge amount first. But if you decide to do that, right, because it's your choice, you can do whatever you want, right? It's your life, it's your own success, it's your own direction. You can choose these things, right? So maybe if you want to do an hour or 3 hours because you're that person, you got to get up and go, and you can do it, right? That's okay. So if you do that, if you decide that's what you want to do, right, just recognize that when you start, you will probably do it badly, but that should be your goal. Your goal should be to do it badly. Meaning, when you go to do it, right? Don't expect that you're going to have this pristine thing and you're never going to be distracted. You're never going to look out the window and like don't expect that. Expect that you're going to have some hangups, but you're going to get it done. You're going to get through it, right? So when you move through that, right, and you're doing your report, or you're writing the thing, or you're making the call, or you're going to the place, whatever it is, when you're moving through that, right, if you have the idea that you're just going to go until you can get it done, that's a successful mindset, right? And a lot of this stuff comes back to your own successful mindsets about this, right? So you could start small, you could start large, you could start now, or you could start later. But one of the things that you really need to recognize is that to actually get progress on this, right, to get going on this, you have to start somewhere, right? You have to start somewhere and sometime. Because a lot of people, they'll watch this and they'll say, yeah, great stuff. I'm so excited to get moving. I want, right? And then what happens is the end of the video comes and you get tired, or you want to go have a bagel, or you want to go to talk to your friends. And then all of it, I like bagels too, right? But I don't like bagels getting in the way of that money, right? Like it's just, you can't let things like that really pull you off the path. Because what happens is you do that consistently enough and your life is not where you want it to be. And maybe that's where you are now. But if you're seeing this, right, and if it's something that you struggle with, just make a small goal and actually go get it done, right? It could be that you're using this video to distract you from doing something. If that's the case, go do it, right? Like there's nothing stopping you, right?
Really,
if not, that's fine.
Viewership right now, but if you have things that you're being distracted by this video from doing, we really encourage you for yourself to go and just do those things, because like they're not going to get done for you, and they need your attention. The things in your life need your attention, and they need you to give it. So it's something that you gotta be able to get through it. That there is no necessarily secret trick as much as just training your conscious mind to be better at handling distractions, really.
Well, and you'll feel better. This is something that I don't think gets talked about enough, is you'll actually feel better, like physically, mentally, psychologically, whatever you want to call it. You'll actually feel better, because when you start, right, the minute you say, okay, I have a task that I want to get done, right, and I'm setting this little timer and I'm going to do it in this time, or I'm going to show up to this place and I'm going to talk to people for this long, or I'm going to make the call and it's going to go for this amount of time. It's going to go this way. And you really put your attention on it. You really hammer in, you focus, right? And you actually get it done, right? It may not even be anything that's huge. It may be something like sweeping your porch, right? But when you get it done, you get this feeling of like, man, like I could do this. Like I could make this something that I actually could do consistently. Like this isn't as hard as I thought it was. This is actually easier than I imagined it to be, because I did it. I got it done, right? So if you start to make a habit of doing these small little things and getting them moving, you'll catch this wind behind you, right? It's a momentum, but it's a momentum of actually feeling really good because you're making progress, right?
Yeah, and you'd be amazed at some of the things that you make up to be such huge tasks in your mind and are really just trivial. There's times where it can be this, there's this feeling about something. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And as soon as you think that, it's kind of this chore now that you're going to have to go through this, you're going to have to trudge through, and it's going to be difficult or awkward or uncomfortable, and you don't want to do it. And then you go to do it and it's just nothing. It took 10 minutes. It was just done. You're just like, oh, Okay, like that's cool. Those are great, and you'd be amazed at how many of the tasks that you build up in your mind to be difficult are merely just you giving them the attention and getting it done. Because once that's done, it's done, and you don't have to think about it anymore. And so like even just attacking small little goals too, giving your attention on something. Even if you don't want to go for long periods of time, give yourself short-term goals that you can like. I'm going to be able to study for this long after 20 days. Like if you want to be able to sit down for an hour straight, well then build up to that and make that your goal. Don't say right now, today I'm going to do this. Just be like, all right, I'm going to start practicing on, increasing my attention and my focus by trying to go for longer increments, go 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and then an hour, and build yourself up to that and actually give yourself a kind of short-term goal. So you have some room to kind of, fumble and stumble a little bit on the first days and make up for it. And you're not like failing as you're doing this. This is all a process of getting you better. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to do this and I failed. Because like, honestly, I think a lot of times our suffering and our difficulties are very self-inflicted by kind of what we set ourselves up to expect. When you don't have an expectation for a certain result, you can't be disappointed by it, and that's not necessarily the greatest way to go through life. But with yourself, when you're working on things, you have this expectation sometimes in your head that, oh, I'm going to do this and everything's gonna be great and it's gonna be fixed and whatever. And then you fail and then you get down on yourself and you're focusing on the negative aspect of it rather than the positive aspect, which is that you've recognized this and you're already working on it, so you have to give your attention to your more to the positive end of it really than the negative, because and give yourself short-term goals that allow you to build up to a certain amount of stamina, not like expectation of it right now. Don't build yourself up for disappointment. Give yourself a short-term goal that's reasonable that you can, work up to, build some endurance and some stamina, and then you'll be able to get there. And then you can celebrate. It's something that you can work on. And if you didn't do well in the first few days, who cares? You still got time to work and keep pushing yourself. It just bypasses a lot of the negative expectations that can come.
Right, and you'll actually have a lot of negative expectations if you start doing this and then you quit. And I've done that. I've been there. If you start and you say, what I'm going to do, then all that stuff that you kind of been putting away, right? You kind of been putting it in the corner. It'll all come back. I'm horrible at this. I don't have this ability. I'm not good at this. I have no attention, right? So instead, if you just started and kept going consistently with smaller stuff and things that were more achievable and, moving in the direction of feeling better about it because you're more successful at it. If you do that consistently, right, instead of having to deal with all those horrible, like just crap feelings about how you aren't good enough to do this and make it happen, right, attention wise, to really focus in, that won't be there anymore, because you'll be able to see yourself. You'll actually gain the ability to see yourself moving forward on it consistently, right? And so it's almost like this freedom in your own mind, right? So I remember it myself, but I feel like this is one of those sticky areas, right? Because it can be hard to get this really drilled down. What would you say? Because we've kind of given some really, really useful ways to maybe get started moving and take action on this, right? And hopefully if you're watching, you have an understanding of what's actually happening. But what would you say are some of the kind of last minute things, like, that might spring out of the woodwork that would really grab the steering wheel and kind of prevent people from moving on this?
Fear. One of the first things that'll come probably to your mind is like, well, I just don't want to go through that again. I don't want to, I don't want that failure. I've tried this before. I've failed at this before. I've made kind of commitments like this and it's disappointing. And that's you're telling me not to set up myself up for disappointment. So I don't want to do that because I feel like I'm going to be disappointed, and you can kind of just logically and emotionally go on this, circle around and around in your head until you actually realize, again, get back to the same place that you've been, which is realizing that you need to change and you want to change, and this leads you out, and so I think the first thing you have to kind of barrier that you have to get through is fear. There's going to be this kind of, these roadblocks, these signposts that come up, say, warning, warning, like danger ahead, caution, men at work, all these flashing little yellow lights, like, whoa, 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 and you're going to be like, I don't want to do this because I'm fine here. And then you'll sit there for a while, and then, the cognitive dissonance will kick in, and you'll realize that, oh, right, I'm not satisfied with with this life or what I'm doing right now. So I have to actually, do this. And then you'll get back up on the horse and you'll try again. But I think, you got to try again. You can't stop. You got to keep going, because if you're struggling with basic things like this, You have a long way ahead of you in a lot of senses, and this is something that's kind of essential in all areas of success. You know, if you need to be able to give your uninhibited, unfractured attention to something, and if you can't, then you need to work on that and take that very seriously. You don't want to, you know, and pay attention to the times that you're, what you're getting distracted by. You know, I'd say if I'm going to wrap up and not go on a huge thing here again, I'd say, you know, pay attention to what actually distracts you the most. If it's your phone, turn it off, put it on airplane mode, put it in another room for however long, and set a timer in the oven where you know you're done and you can go. You know, if it's friends or people in your house, lock your door and put a do not disturb sign on your doorknob when you're working and tell them, hey, when I'm doing this, I do not want to be distracted. I have to focus. You know, whatever it is and whatever you have to do, identify what distracts you the most. Identify what's pulling your attention and making you and putting you in this position of little productivity and low efficiency in whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So that'd probably be my final thing. Pay attention to what it is, self-awareness.
No, and really knock it out. I mean, that's a great summary. I was gonna maybe close it up, but honestly, that I don't.
Can I
really
just say
my hair?
Yeah. My hair just looks amazing in this video.
if only.
If we're gonna wrap it up, I mean, I feel like it needs to be said. That's all I'm saying.
I try to let them know, right? You know, and maybe if you think his hair looks amazing, leave a comment or don't. Right? It's like just it's
what's with the tone there? Anyway, sorry.
Because I'm mad at your hair, man. Like you see this? Like I don't have that 50s hair, bro. It's that life. It's that life. It's G-Easy. And anyway, we're getting off topic here. So,
fractured attention.
Right. Again. And so here's the point. Here's the key, right? We're reel it back. Go get started. Do it today. Do something that's achievable. Do something that is not easy, but simple. And something that will make you feel better to actually achieve, right? And it could be anything. You can plug anything in this hole here, right? Think about it, and maybe, you know, you have an idea that you know you should get done, but you haven't done it because you don't feel like you have the attention. Well, now you do. Now you have the resources. Now you have the reason. Now you have the opportunities. Now you have the decision that you've already made probably to move forward on this, right? So if that's the case, go do it, right? And we'll see you soon.